Today we're talking about negative splits, right? What are they, how to implement them and execute it and plan it into your race schedule. My name is Shona Hendricks from CoachParry.com. I'm going to hand you over to Lindsey and he's going to kick us off.
So what is the principle behind negative splits? In reality, what negative splits is trying to achieve is making you use your energy consistently and spreading it out across the duration of the event that you're training for. If we go back and we look at world records across multiple distances, across both genders, what we will see always is that there is a very tight, even to negative, very slightly positive split. So in other words, there is a very even distribution of pace, effort, whatever terminology you want to use, that brings out record performances. We also know from years and years and years of data and analyzing runners of all abilities that the best performances come from people who pace themselves extremely consistently. Now, often in race situations, that doesn't allow itself to come out because there's a little bit of a cat and mouse, or there are a lot of surges in between. Some people believe that the only way they can win a race against a particular individual is by running their legs out from under them. And so often in race scenarios, we see winning times that are slower than what we expect individuals to be able to run. But when we look at personal best performances almost across the board, those always come from paced effort. So if we look at marathons, if we look at 10,000 on the track, 5,000 on the track, 1,500 on the track, the best performances of most individuals come in races that are paced by a pacemaker or someone external that sets a very specific pace that is set up for that record performance. And the premise and the basic principle literally comes from the fact that the best way to get our best time is to equally distribute our physiological resources over the duration of an event. So what does that mean when it comes to pacing yourself in a race that you've been training for? Well, the first and most important principle there is we have to know what we are targeting. We need to make that a realistic goal. So it must be based on the training that we've done, perhaps a test, our intervals that we do. A test would be an example of something like a time trial, but really we need to base our final target time on something realistic that we know that is achievable. Then we have to go and take a look at the route profile. Does the route profile allow me to run at the same pace? In other words, will an equal effort lead to a fairly equal pace to finish that race? If the answer to that question is yes, it becomes quite easy. We set ourselves target milestones to hit at intervals along that race. A marathon or a half marathon is easy because if we hit 5K intervals, for example, we get to 5Ks, we check our watch. Am I on track? Am I ahead? If I'm ahead, I need to do something about that because I'm going to pay for that later in the race. Okay? What happens if we are running a race that we know is very hilly in the second half? Then we have to make an adjustment to how that race is going to be run. And the first question we have to ask ourselves is my potential on this half marathon achievable on this route profile? Okay? If the answer to that question is no, and it probably isn't if it's a very difficult route profile, how am I going to adjust that goal to take into account this route profile, number one? And then number two, how am I going to account for a relatively even effort? So in other words, an even distribution of energy across that race. So in that race, a negative split is not going to be possible, but I'm still going to try and mete out an even effort so that I know that if I'm 2 minutes slower in the second half than the first half, it probably means that I ran a very consistent race, and in principle I was on a very evenly paced strategy. And the final principle behind a negative split or a positive split race is this, and that is that the stronger we feel towards the back end of the race and the faster we can finish, the more positive a mindset we get into, and the more likely we are going to be in a position where we can actually push ourselves a little bit past what we think we are capable of. And in those scenarios, we can often end up being a little bit quicker than what we planned to or would have liked to have been on race day. The absolute opposite is true. When we go out too fast and we start to struggle and we start to get into a negative mindset, it gets very difficult to pick ourselves up and to be able to finish that race strongly. And depending on the length of the race, there are two rules of thumb, and the one my father taught me as a 5-year-old. He always used to say this to me. He used to tell me, Lindsey, you can never make up enough in the front of a race to stop yourself from losing that time at the end of the race. And the other one was that in marathon or longer races, for every minute that you are too fast through halfway, you can lose up to 4 minutes in the second half of the race. Know your race, set your target, plan your race, execute your race.
Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. And if you're interested in this and really want to work out how to plan your race in the perfect sort of strategic way, be sure to check out the video that's on screen now.